So, anesthesia-free cat grooming. You see it everywhere, right? It's marketed as this super gentle, totally natural, and way safer choice for our pets. But is it really? We're going to dive into a warning from a professional cat groomer, and it uncovers some hidden risks that, honestly, every single cat owner should know about before their next appointment.
Okay, so let's just get right to it. The big question. Is avoiding anesthesia always the safer choice for your cat? I mean, on the surface, it seems like a no-brainer, right? Of course it's safer. But, well, the reality is a whole lot more complicated. And everything we're about to talk about, it comes directly from a mandatory disclosure notice. You know, the fine print from a professional groomer. And trust me, it might just change how you see the whole thing.
And this is really the heart of the issue. On one hand, you've got the popular belief. It's a completely risk-free alternative. But then you have the reality from a groomer's perspective. And they put it pretty bluntly in their disclosure. And I'm quoting here, it's not unconditionally safe. So let's break down what that really means.
Okay, so why would a professional groomer make such a really stark warning? This isn't just them giving their opinion. This is part of a mandatory legal disclosure. It's designed specifically to let owners know about the very real risks involved.
And this right here is the core of the problem. See, when an animal is sedated, it's out of it. But a conscious cat, it has to process every single thing that's happening around it. We're talking about a creature that lives for routine and predictability. And a grooming salon, well, it's pretty much the exact opposite of that. It can be a total sensory overload.
Which leads us to probably the biggest risk of all, and is something you can't even see. I'm talking about stress. And look, we're not talking about your cat just being a little nervous. We're talking about a powerful and potentially very dangerous physiological reaction.
I mean, just try to put yourself in your cat's paws for a second. You're in a brand new place. There are all these weird smells. You hear the buzzing of clippers, maybe the roar of a high-velocity dryer. And on top of all that, a total stranger is holding you. Any one of those things is a major stressor. But here, they're all happening at the exact same time. And here's the thing you really need to get. This stress isn't just an emotion. It can kick off a really dangerous chain reaction in their body. It starts out as simple anxiety, but in some cats, that anxiety quickly escalates to a major warning sign, like open-mouth breathing. Now, if that sign is missed or ignored, it can spiral into something much worse, like seizures or collapse. And in the absolute rarest, most tragic cases, the shock to their system can actually lead to sudden death.
Okay, I really need to hammer this point home because it is so important. Open-mouth breathing, panting, is not normal for a cat, not like it is for a dog. If you ever see a cat doing this, it's a massive red flag, a real 5-alarm fire. It's a crystal clear signal that the cat is in severe distress, and it means everything has to stop, right then, immediately.
So, okay, we've talked about the invisible risk of stress, but there's also a very real, very direct physical side to all of this. The actual act of grooming a cat that isn't sedated involves certain techniques, and those techniques can be risky for some cats.
Now, this might sound a little intense, but it's just the reality of how cat grooming works. You see, cat skin is super stretchy. To avoid nicking or cutting it with the clippers, a groomer has to pull the skin taut. They also have to physically restrain the cat, to keep everyone safe, the cat and the groomer. These aren't optional things. They're standard, necessary procedures.
But, and this is a big but, those very necessary techniques can be really dangerous for cats that have underlying conditions. And a lot of the time, these conditions are completely undiagnosed. The groomer's warning specifically points to cats with things like weak kneecaps, that's called patellar luxation, or hereditary problems with their cartilage, or really any kind of hidden joint issue. That physical restraint can put way too much pressure on those weak spots.
So what happens? Well, the outcomes can range from mild to severe. On the less severe end, a cat might just limp for a day or two after their grooming session, annoying but temporary. But on the other end of the spectrum, that same necessary restraint could cause a dislocated kneecap or even a lasting, permanent disability.
So this all leads to a really important question, right? Why can't the groomer just check for these problems beforehand? Well, the answer really gets at a huge misunderstanding people have about what a groomer can do versus what a veterinarian can do.
This really lays it out pretty clearly. So a really good, responsible groomer might do some basic checks. They might listen to the cat's heartbeat or maybe do a quick urine strip test. But you have to understand, these checks are just on the surface. They have absolutely no way of detecting serious underlying issues like heart disease, hidden viruses, or genetic disorders.
the kinds of things that could turn a normal grooming day into a full-blown medical emergency.
And this quote from the groomer's disclosure just sums it all up perfectly. This is how they have to operate. They're cat groomers, not veterinarians. They don't have access to x-rays or blood work. So they must work under the assumption that the cat coming in is healthy simply because they have no way to prove it isn't.
Okay, so if the groomer has to assume your cat is healthy, then who is responsible for knowing if they actually are? Well, that brings us to our final and honestly our most important point. The most critical person in this whole equation is you.
This is really the bottom line of the whole disclosure notice. Think about it. You're the one who knows your cat's history. You know their personality. You know all their little quirks and those subtle signs that something isn't right. So the final call and the ultimate responsibility for their safety, that lands squarely on you, the owner.
So what can you do to protect your cat? Well, the groomer actually lays out some really clear, practical steps. First things first, get a proper health check from your vet before you even think about grooming, especially for the first time. Next, be totally honest with your groomer. Tell them everything you know about your cat's health. You also need to learn how to spot those critical stress signs we talked about, like the open mouth breathing. The groomer also says that if your cat is a rescue, or you just don't know their full history, you should plan on staying at the salon during the entire appointment. And last but not least, trust your intuition. If your cat just seems off that day, cancel. It's not worth the risk.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. Look, the goal here isn't to say that anesthesia-free grooming is always a bad idea. Not at all. The point is to give you the information that the professionals themselves want you to have. So now, knowing about these hidden risks, the stress, the potential for physical injury, and more importantly, understanding your own cat's unique health and personality, what is the right choice for your cat? That's a question that only you can answer.